The four horses and riders of Revelation chapter 6, biowarfare in Scripture. Several biblical plagues are on the earth. When the so-called variants began to happen in relation to the most prominent plague, the very first day I heard the word variant, I began to wonder, or rather suspect, the possibility that the variants were not mere mutations, but were actual symptoms of the people vaccinated, breeding new versions of the virus in their bodies. To understand this possibility, we must ask a question. Is it possible to infect someone with a vaccine? Let's see and hear how Anthony Fauci answers this question. Here is an excerpt from an interview with a very interesting answer. I accidentally played it backwards, and it was so intriguing, I left it in. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Fauci.
So, does the vaccine make you worse? And there are diseases in which you vaccinate someone, they get infected with what you're trying to protect them with, and you actually enhance the infection.
And there are diseases in which you vaccinate someone, they get infected with what you're trying to protect them with, and you actually enhance the infection. And there are diseases in which you vaccinate someone, they get infected with what you're trying to protect them with, and you actually enhance the infection.
You can get a good feel for that in animal models. So that's going to be interspersed at the same time that we're testing. We're going to try and make sure we don't have enhancement. So the worst possible thing you could do is vaccinate somebody to prevent infection and actually make them worse.
To prevent infection and actually make them worse.
That sounds like a yes. Ancient armies on the entire surface of the earth have used biowarfare. The plague and other microbe-infested organisms were used to terrorize and weaken the opposing armies. Infected dead animals were flung by catapult over the walls of strongholds or simply left outside of the gates, and bodies of humans that had succumbed to disease were sometimes used. Later, infected blankets and other trade goods were used on unsuspecting natives. And using biowarfare to conquer can be found in the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation chapter 6, we're introduced to the four horsemen, the white horse with the bow to conquer, the red horse with a great sword taking peace from the earth, the black horse with a yoke of servitude. It's not a scale as we were told in the past. Also the pale green horse ridden by death, called thanatos in Greek, with a power given him over the fourth part of the earth to kill with sword, hunger, death, and the beasts of the earth. The focus of this video are the white horse with the bow to conquer, the pale greenish horse ridden by death, called again thanatos, who has the power over the fourth part of earth to kill with sword, hunger, death, and the beasts of the earth. And we will only read the first two verses, then verses 7 and 8 of Revelation chapter 6. Then open the meaning of what kind of beasts the pale rider was given power to kill with. Revelation chapter 6. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard as it were the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. Let's look into the word bow. From the Strong's Concordance, G5115, toxin. From the base of G5088, a bow, apparently, supposedly, as the simplest fabric. Bow. Total occurrence is 1, and I've always thought it peculiar that there are some words in the scripture that are only used one time. And those words, I believe, are extremely important words, as in the book of Daniel, when the type of wool, the type of pure wool that is described in the Ancient of Days hair, is actually used in scripture only one time. And it so happens to be the pure wool that is used to tie the wave sheaf, that is in the form of a woolen rope. And that brings to mind the image of locks of hair, just like we see the Israelites used to wear in some of the ancient artifacts, as in the steles and carvings of conquerors when they used to sack Jerusalem for our disobedience. Something to keep in mind. Now, let's validate why the word for beasts is connected to the word used for bow, and may have also foretold of biowarfare and also the current plague on earth that is being used to kill, cause famine, conquer, and yoke. Let's read Revelation chapter 6, verses 7 and 8. Revelation chapter 6. And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast saying, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed him. And power was given to them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. Now the ancient Greek word used here for beasts. From the Strong's Concordance, G2342, therion, diminutive from the same as G2339, so-called a dangerous animal, a venomous wild beast, and it's used 46 occurrences in the KJV. And just maybe that venomous wild beast could possibly have been meant to imply a pathogen. Being in our right minds and hoping for the Spirit of truth to guide us in understanding, we know that there has been instances in the scripture where Yahuwah used animals to devour the unrepentant and unrighteous. For instance, when the crowd of unrepentant souls mobbed Noah when he was entering the ark and the rain started. And when he sent lions after the unrighteous, strange inhabitants after the king of Assyria resettled Samaria with foreigners who, like the sons of Ashkenaz and Edom, also claim to be Jews until this day. However, there are no instances of animals devouring millions of souls like microbes do. Plus, there are better word choices in the ancient Greek that would be closest to the meaning of a land animal, such as thera, for instance. This word would be a more accurate choice and in perfect line with the massive animal attacks in Scripture. But this writer believes the Septuagint writers chose the diminutive form of the word thera for a specific reason. From the Strong's Concordance, G2339, thera, from a wild animal as game, hunting, that is figuratively also destruction or a trap, used in one occurrence in Scripture. Now that we see that there was a better word choice, let's get back to the word the Septuagint writers used in this instance, therion, and define diminutive. From the Oxford Dictionary of English, diminutive, an adjective, extremely or unusually small, as in a diminutive figure dressed in black. Used of a word, name, or suffix implying smallness, either actual or imputed to convey affection, scorn, etc. In essence, it's used to mean an extremely small thing. Now let's take a look at the thesaurus and find out what it says. From the Oxford American Writers' Thesaurus, diminutive, an adjective, tiny, small, little, minute, miniature, mini, microscopic, nanoscopic, small scale, compact, pocket, toy, midget, undersized, short, stubby, elfin, dwarfish, dwarf, pygmy, bantam, hormicular, or Lilliputian. Now, I don't think I need to read the rest of these examples here. I think everyone gets the picture. It means microscopic and even nanoscopic. This writer understands that there are instances in Scripture where the diminutive description is used to describe actual serpents, which is how the sons of Japheth named their kings. Basilius, after the basilisk, and basilica, which is the temple of the serpent and where his throne is, and what Yahushua and Yahuchanan, or John the Baptist, call the impersonators of Israel, sons of vipers. It is most important for the reader to understand that the Scripture interprets itself, that the ancient Greek word for bow implies biowarfare. The ancient Greek word for bow is toxin. It is the etymological origin of the word toxin, and recounts how ancient armies would perform biowarfare by the way of poisoning their arrows with the plague and other disease. Thereby we know that the microscopic and nanoscopic form of this word therion is also implied. Next, since the rider of the white horse was also given a crown to conquer, and the inhabitants of earth are now being yoked with a peculiar and deadly form of a crown, let's now look in the Strong's Concordance for the word crown, and afterwards look at its definition. From the Strong's Concordance, G4735, Stephanos, from an apparently primary stepho, to twine or wreath, a chaplet as a badge of royalty, a prize in the public games or a symbol of honor, generally, but more conspicuous and elaborate than the simple fillet. Literally or figuratively, a crown. It just came to mind that is also what we see on a lot of the logos of the one world government, the New World Order, or the government of the beast, the fillet, or wreath, like what Caesar used to wear for the Roman government, which is what we're under at this very day. And we also know that the beast that got the deadly head wound was the old Greek Empire that melded into the Roman Empire, and because they are the same people in essence, and the Roman Empire was collapsed afterwards, after Yahushua laid down his life for us, we can know that this deadly beast that had the head wound that healed is in essence Rome, and we see it throughout the entire earth, in the buildings, and the laws, and just the mindset of the people. And of course, everything bows down, or every ruler or president bows down to the new Roman authority, which is Francis. And of course, all of the heads of the denominations also bow down and kiss him and kiss his ring and pay him all types of homage. And we can see these beasts in Revelation chapter 13. The first beast and the second beast, both speaking blasphemy against the Most High and his name, his tabernacle, and those that dwell in Shemayim, and also those of the earth that he has waged war against, who are still sojourning in the earth in the different lands of our captivity. Now let's define the word crown. From the Oxford American Writer's Thesaurus. Crown. A noun. He placed the crown on the new monarch's head, as an example. It's a coronet. Diadem, tiara, circlet, chaplet, fillet, wreath, garland, headband, or a coronal. So now we see a particular word in these two words, coronet or coronal. Let us continue. A circular ornamental headdress worn by a monarch as a symbol of authority, usually made of or decorated with precious metals and jewels often stolen from another country. The crown, the monarchy or reigning monarch, their loyalty to the blank came before their loyalty to the crown. An ornament, emblem, or badge shaped like a crown, as in shiny covers embossed with gold crowns. A wreath of leaves or flowers, especially that worn as an emblem in ancient Greece or Rome. The top or highest part of something, the crown of the hill. The top part of a person's head or hat. His hair was swept back over his crown. Let's continue. The part of a plant just above and below the ground from which the roots and shoots branch out. Mulch should be molded around the crowns of the shrubs, for instance. The upper branching or spreading part of a tree or other plant, an erect evergreen tree with a dense crown, for instance. The upper part of a cut gem above the girdle. The part of a tooth projecting from the gum. An artificial replacement or covering for the upper part of a tooth. Also, let's pay attention to the next few. A crown piece, a British coin with a face value of 25 pence, as in Mike Pence. And Revelation 6, verse 6, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, which that word is pence also. But in the scriptural sense, it means denarius, and it's the exact same meaning as pence, or 5 shillings. A foreign coin with a name meaning crown, especially the krona, or krone. Let's continue. I want to point out also that a lot of things that are coming to mind, I'm not gonna go into. I'm gonna leave it for the reader or the person watching this video to understand for themselves. To ceremonially place a crown on the head of someone in order to invest them as a monarch, as in he went to Rome to be crowned. Next, let's skip all the way down to number 3. Be the triumphant culmination of an effort or endeavor, especially a prolonged one. Phrases: crowning glory, as in the best and most notable aspect of something, the scene is the crowning glory of his marvelously entertaining show. To crown it all, in British, is the final event in a series of particularly fortunate or unfortunate events. Now, I'm going to leave it at that for now, and we're going to get back into the scripture verses. But go back over these and just think about everything that's been happening since this plague hit the earth. And not to speak of my dreams or anything, I have had dreams of a white looking horse. It was kind of grayish looking. And at first I thought it was President Trump on it. But I'm beginning to think over the past several months that it was another person on that horse. Of course, in dreams, you see things, and it happened a couple of times. But in the dream, just like when when anyone's having a dream, it's kind of hard to describe people or figure out who particular people are that you see in these dreams. But it was a European man, and he was standing next to the horse in one dream, and the other dream there were two, he was on top of the horse. And they happened back around 2015. A few years before all of this nonsense with this crown situation and with this famine situation that's being engineered in the earth, and with this yoke of certain things that are being mandated in the earth right now. Now also ask yourself, who has been trying to conquer the earth for a very long time? And what exactly is looking for a final event to crown it all, so to speak? Who has been looking for a culmination of an effort or endeavor, a prolonged effort or endeavor to conquer the earth? And most importantly, ask yourself and pray about it, what if a bow, an arrow, is now a needle? I just had an idea. What I'll do, instead of going back into the scripture, I think we've covered pretty much everything that I would like to cover in this particular video having to do with the scripture. Just trying to keep it short. And I'm going to attach a video from, I think it's the 70s, that has to do with exactly what we're going through in the earth right now. So I pray that everyone has gotten edification from this video, and I would like to give a thought first to Israel and also to those of the other nations who fear Yahuwah and have begun to free themselves from the beast and his image.
The flu season is upon us. Which type will we worry about this year? And what kind of shots will we be told to take? Remember the swine flu scare of 1976? That was the year the U.S. government told us all that swine flu could turn out to be a killer that could spread across the nation. And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic.
And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic.
Well, 46 million of us obediently took the shot. And now 4,000 Americans are claiming damages from Uncle Sam amounting to $3.5 billion because of what happened when they took that shot. By far the greatest number of the claims, 2/3 of them, are for neurological damage or even death, allegedly triggered by the flu shot. We pick up the story back in 1976 when the threat posed by the swine flu virus seemed very real indeed.
This virus was the cause of a pandemic in 1918 and 1919 that resulted in over 500,000 deaths in the United States, as well as 20 million deaths around the world.
See how easy it is to...
Thus, the U.S. government's publicity machine was cranked into action to urge all America to protect itself against the swine flu menace.
Influenza is serious business. During major flu epidemics, millions of people are sick and thousands die. Well, this year you can get protection. The vaccines are safe, easy to take, and they can protect you against flu. So roll up your sleeve. Protect yourself.
One of those who did roll up her sleeve was Judy Roberts. She was perfectly healthy, an active woman, when in November of 1976, she took her shot. 2 weeks later, she says, she began to feel a numbness starting up her legs.
I joked about it at that time. I said I'll be numb to the knees by Friday if this keeps up. By the following week, I was totally paralyzed.
So completely paralyzed, in fact, that they had to operate on her to enable her to breathe. And for 6 months, Judy Roberts was a quadriplegic. The diagnosis? A neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS for short. These neurological diseases are little understood. They affect people in different ways. As you can see in these home movies taken by a friend, Judy Roberts' paralysis confined her mostly to a wheelchair for over a year. But this disease can even kill. Indeed, there are 300 claims now pending from the families of GBS victims who died, allegedly as a result of the swine flu shot. In other GBS victims, the crippling effects diminish and all but disappear. But for Judy Roberts, progress back to good health has been painful and partial.
Now, I noticed that your smile, Judy, is a little bit constricted.
Yes, it is.
Is it different from what it used to be?
Very different. I have a greatly decreased mobility in my lips. And I can't drink through a straw on the right-hand side. I can't blow out birthday candles. I don't whistle anymore, for which my husband is grateful.
It may be a little difficult for you to answer this question, but have you recovered as much as you are going to recover?
Yes, this is it.
So you will now have a legacy of braces on your legs for the rest of your life?
Yes, the weakness in my hands will stay, and the leg braces will stay.
So Judy Roberts and her husband have filed a claim against the U.S. government. They're asking $12 million, though they don't expect to get nearly that much.
Could this possibly be the reason for the indemnity clauses and other protections that we see for the drug companies?
Judy, why did you take the flu shot?
I'd never taken any other flu shots, but I felt like this was going to be a major epidemic. And the only way to prevent a major epidemic of a really deadly variety of flu was for everybody to be immunized.
Where did this so-called deadly variety of flu, where did it first hit back in 1976? It began right here at Fort Dix in New Jersey in January of that year, when a number of recruits began to complain of respiratory ailments, something like the common cold. An Army doctor here sent samples of their throat cultures to the New Jersey Public Health Lab to find out just what kind of bug was going around here. One of those samples was from a Private David Lewis who had left his sickbed to go on a forced march. Private Lewis had collapsed on that march, and his sergeant had revived him by mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But the sergeant showed no signs of illness. A few days later, Private Lewis died.
If this disease is so potentially fatal that it's going to kill a young, healthy man, a middle-aged school teacher doesn't have prayer.
The New Jersey lab identified most of those soldiers' throat cultures as the normal kind of flu virus going around that year, but they could not make out what kind of virus was in the culture from the dead soldier and from 4 others who were sick. So they sent those cultures to the Federal Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia for further study. A few days later, they got the verdict: swine flu. But that much publicized outbreak of swine flu at Fort Dix involved only Private Lewis, who died, and those 4 other soldiers who recovered completely without the swine flu shot.
If I had known at that time that the boy had been in a sick bed, got up, went out on a forced march, and then collapsed and died, I would never have taken the shot.
The rationale for our recommendation was not on the basis of the death of a single individual, but it was on the basis that when we do see a change in the characteristics of the influenza virus, it is a massive public health problem in this country.
Dr. David Senser, then head of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, is now in private industry. He devised the swine flu program, and he pushed it. He devised the swine flu program, and he pushed it.
So this creature both worked at the CDC and created a vaccine that he ended up selling to the government and pushing on the public.
You began to give flu shots to the American people in October of '76.
October 1st.
By that time, how many cases of swine flu around the world had been reported?
There had been several reported, but none confirmed. There had been cases in Australia that were reported by the press, by the news media. There were cases in...
None confirmed. Did you ever uncover any other outbreaks of swine flu anywhere in the world?
No. 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 No.
No.
Now, nearly everyone was to receive the shot in a public health facility where a doctor might not be present. Therefore, it was up to the CDC to come up with some kind of official consent form, giving the public all the information it needed about the swine flu shot. This form stated that the swine flu vaccine had been tested. What it didn't say was that after those tests were completed, the scientists developed another vaccine. And that was the one given to most of the 46 million who took the shot. That vaccine was called X53A. Was X53A ever field tested?
I I can't say. I would have to...
It wasn't.
I don't know.
This is a look of a person who's been caught in a lie. Anthony Fauci has been caught in several. He even has the same look about him as this guy does. An untested vaccine being pushed onto the population, and it has happened already in history. Since when did we start trusting in mankind to inject us willingly and potentially unwillingly? Actually, not potentially, but actually unwillingly, with microbes, instead of just trusting on the Most High Yah to keep us healthy, as we've done throughout all creation.
Well, I would think that you're in charge of the program.
I would have to check the records. I haven't looked at this in some time.
The information form, the consent form, was also supposed to warn people about any risks of serious complications following the shot. But did it?
No, I had never heard of any reactions other than a sore arm, fever, this sort of thing.
Judy Roberts' husband, Gene, also took the shot.
Yes, I looked at that document. I signed it. Nothing on there said I was going to have a heart attack or I can get Guillain-Barré, which I never heard of.
What if people from the government, from the Center for Disease Control, what if they had indeed known about it? What would be your feeling?
They should have told us.
Did anyone ever come to you and say, you know something, fellas? There's the possibility of neurological damage if you get into a mass immunization program?
No.
No one ever did?
No.
Do you know Michael Hatwick?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Michael Hatwick directed the surveillance team for the swine flu program at the CDC. His job was to find out what possible complications could arise from taking the shot and to report his findings to those in charge.
Did you know ahead of time, Dr. Hatwick, that there had been case reports of neurological disorders, neurological illness, apparently associated with the injection of influenza vaccine?
Absolutely.
You did?
Yes.
How'd you know that?
By review of the literature.
So you told your superiors, the men in charge of the swine flu immunization program, about the possibility of neurological disorders?
Absolutely.
What would you say if I told you that your superiors say that you never told them about the possibility of neurological complications?
That's nonsense. I can't believe that they would say that they did not know that there were neurological illnesses associated with influenza vaccination. That simply is not true. We did know that.
I've said that Dr. Hatwick has never told me of his feelings on this subject.
Then he's lying.
I guess you would have to make that assumption.
Then why does this report from your own agency, dated July 1976, list neurological complications as a possibility?
I think the consensus of the scientific community was that the evidence relating neurologic disorders to influenza immunization was such that they did not feel that this association was a real one.
You didn't feel it was necessary to tell American people that information?
I think that over the years we have tried to inform the American people as fully as possible.
As part of informing Americans about the swine flu threat, Dr. Sensor's CDC also helped create the advertising to get the public to take the shot.
Let me read to you from one of your own agency's memos planning the campaign to urge Americans to take the shot. The swine flu vaccine has been taken by many important persons, he wrote. Example, President Ford, Henry Kissinger, Elton John, Muhammad Ali, Mary Tyler Moore, Rudolph Nureyev, Walter Cronkite, Ralph Nader, Edward Kennedy, etc., etc. True?
I'm not familiar with that particular piece of paper, but I do know that at least of that group, President Ford did take the vaccination.
Did you talk to these people beforehand to find out if they planned to take the shot?
I did not know.
Did anybody?
I do not know.
Did you get permission to use their names in your campaign?
I do not know.
Mary, did you take a swine flu shot?
No, I did not.
Did you give them permission to use your name saying that you had or were going to?
Absolutely not. Never did.
Did you ask your own doctor about taking the swine flu shot?
Yes, and at the time he thought it might be a good idea. But but I resisted it because I was leery of having the symptoms that sometimes go with that kind of inoculation.
So you didn't?
No, I didn't.
Have you spoken to your doctor since?
Yes.
And?
He's delighted that I didn't take that shot.
You're in charge. Somebody's in charge.
This
is your advertising strategy that I have a copy of here.
Who's it signed by?
This one is unsigned. But you'll acknowledge that it was your baby, so to speak.
It could have been from the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. It could be from CDC. I don't know. I'll be happy to take responsibility for it.
It's been 3 years now since you fell ill with GBS, right?
Right.
Has the federal government, in your estimation, played fair with you about your claim?
No, I don't think so. It seems to be dragging on and on and on, and really no end in sight that I can see at this point.
With respect to the cases of Guillain-Barré, allegedly...
Former Secretary of HEW Joseph Califano, too, was disturbed that there was no end in sight. So a year and a half ago, he promised that Uncle Sam would cut the bureaucratic red tape for victims suffering from GBS and would pay up quickly.
We shouldn't hold them to an impossible or too difficult standard of proving that they were hurt. Even if we pay a few people a few $1,000s that might not have deserved it, I think justice requires that we promptly pay those people who do deserve it.
Who's making the decision to be so hard-nosed about settling?
Well, I assume the Justice Department is.
Griffin Bell before he left?
Well, the Justice Department agreed to the statement I made. It was cleared word for word with the lawyers in the Justice Department by my HEW lawyers.
And that statement said, in effect?
That statement said that we should pay Guillain-Barré claims without regard to whether the federal government was negligent if they resulted from the swine flu shot.
I think the government knows it's wrong.
If it drags out long enough, that people will just give up. Let it go.
I am a little more adamant in my thoughts than my wife is, because I told Judy to take the shot. She wasn't going to take it, and she never had shots, and I'm mad with my government because they knew the facts, but they didn't release those facts because if they had released them, the people wouldn't have taken. And they can come out tomorrow and tell me there's going to be an epidemic, and they can drop off like flies next to me. I will not take another shot that my government tells me to take.
Meantime, Judy Roberts and some 4,000 others like her are still waiting for their day in court.
I don't need another flu shot. I had a flu shot last year.
A swine flu epidemic may be coming.
Swine flu shot? Well, I don't know. I've been thinking about it.
It could make you very sick.
Swine flu? Man, I'm too fast to let it catch me.
You'll want to be protected.
I'm the healthiest 55-year-old you ever seen. Hey, I play golf every weekend.
Get a shot of protection. The swine flu shot.
Joe brought it home from the office. He gave it to Betty and one of his kids and to Betty's mother. But Betty's mother went back to California the next day. On her way to the airport, she gave it to a cab driver, a ticket agent, and one of the charming stewardesses. At school, Joe's kid gave it to some other kids, and Mrs. Merrill got it and gave it to her husband. In California, Betty's mother gave it to her best friend, Dottie. But Dottie had a heart condition and she died. But before she died, Dottie gave it to her girlfriend, the mailman, the paper boy, and the vet when she went to pick up her chihuahua.
If a swine flu epidemic comes, this is how it could spread. You'll want to be protected, especially if you're elderly or chronically ill. Get a shot of protection, the swine flu shot.